Good evening, students. I hope you're able to hear me, right?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. We'll get started. So what was the last topic we were discussing yesterday? It was about the fluids at rest, right? So I introduced the basics of what is Pascal's law, right? So today we'll see the concept in depth. Okay. So let us recollect the concepts which we discussed yesterday. So yesterday we discussed these concepts. What were they? Variation of pressure in a static fluid. We saw what will happen when the liquid, when you consider a horizontal component of the liquid inside, and when you consider a vertical component inside, right? So I told you yesterday that the pressure difference between any 2 points will be equal to rho into G into the difference between, or the distance between those 2 points, right? Rho GH. And I also told you to measure atmospheric pressure, what is the instrument used? That is a barometer, which is used to measure the atmospheric pressure, while manometer is a device which is used to measure the pressure difference, right? Similarly, I hope you guys remember this point. Whenever you talk about an ideal fluid, in case of a fluid, we know that P is equal to P naught plus rho GH. When the atmospheric pressure is changed to delta P naught, then the increase in pressure can be felt at that point also. So that what we can say is the change in the atmospheric pressure is equally the pressure, that is the excess pressure that is applied, is equally transmitted to the other parts of the liquid. That is what the statement says. If an external pressure is applied to an enclosed fluid, it is transmitted to every point in the fluid undiminished. What do we mean by undiminished? The exact magnitude of that value will get transferred from one point to another, and this is what we call it as Pascal's law. So that is what we are going to start with today. Okay. So what is Pascal's law? Please write it down. Please write down the heading as Pascal's law and write down the statement that I'm going to tell you. So in an enclosed fluid, write it down. In an enclosed fluid, pressure is transmitted to every point in the fluid. Pressure is transmitted to every point in the fluid without being lost. Okay. So having said this, we will see one of the applications of this Pascal's law, which is in a mission called as hydraulic mission. Okay. So generally, whenever you say, whenever external pressure is applied on any part of the fluid contained in a vessel, what will happen? It is transmitted undiminished and equally in all directions. So this Pascal's law for transmission of fluid pressure. And one of the important applications of this Pascal's law is hydraulic missions. Okay. So you would have seen this. I'm not sure how many of you seen this. Have you heard this word hydraulic missions anywhere? Yes or no?
Yes, sir, in cranes.
So, where did you see this? In cranes. Okay. Have you ever? Sorry.
It's used for like metal forging, I guess. Some kind of tool. A tool used for metal forging.
Metal
hydraulic.
forging.
Yeah, sir. I've heard it.
Okay, but have you seen like how it works? Not
no,
sure,
sir.
huh?
Not
Okay, no problem. Okay, have you ever seen this kind of a stuff? Suppose, let's say there is a door. Okay. suppose there is a door in an office where you open it, and have you ever seen when you leave it, the door will automatically get closed? So have you seen these kind of doors where there will be some doors where you have to open, you have to close it manually. But what will happen if you open certain doors, there is a possibility, you open the door and leave, suddenly what will happen? The door will close on its by itself. Have you ever seen this kind of stuff?
Yes, sir.
Right. So sometimes we call it as automatic door closure. Right. 1 minute. Let me show if I can. Let me see if I can show you. So I have something in front of me. I'll show you. See, this door, this is there, right? So are you able to see this thing that is present? It's called as a hydraulic pump. See what will happen. There is a door which is closed. Now what I'm going to do is I'll press and leave it. See what is going to happen. What happened? Did you see what happened? I'll do it again. Guys, did you observe or not? So this door is there. I pressed and left it. What should have actually happened? This part should have fallen very fast, right? But why didn't it fall? It is because of this pump. Guys, at least tell an yes or no.
Yes, sir.
Did you observe what happened? So that pump which I showed you is what is a hydraulic pump. So that is also another application of Pascal's law. Are you guys able to visualize what I'm trying to say? So that is also one of the hydraulic motions, but that is not what we are going to discuss. See, there's a real-time example that I tried to show you so that you can visualize what exactly is happening. Okay, so the pressure inside will be controlled. That is the reason why that door got opened very slow. Okay. Based on Pascal's law, devices such as hydraulic lifts and hydraulic brakes. This is a part of your syllabus. Okay, hydraulic lift and hydraulic brakes are designed. In these devices, what will happen is fluids are used for transmitting pressure. For example, if you take a hydraulic lift will look something like this. Right, are you able to see a car? Suppose, let's say there is a car mechanic who wants to repair the car under it. Okay, so what are the two options available? One is he can go under the car and do that repair. Okay, suppose he wants to do that work for a longer duration and it is not possible for him to go under and do it. So what will he do? It is better if that is lifted, right? So to lift it, there are many options available. Maybe you can use a pulley and try to lift the car and make it work. But the easiest way is if you take the help of these fluids and apply the Pascal's law, what can happen is you're able to see this lift right there, right? Right. So what will happen is if you apply pressure here, if you apply force on this side, then this force will get equally transmitted through this enclosed fluid. This whole thing is a fluid. Okay. It will get transmitted through the fluid and it will lift the car on the other side. So from this, what we can say is there will be a pressure at point number 1. There will be a pressure at point number 2. So what does mathematically Pascal's law mean? The pressure at point 1 is equal to pressure at point 2. That's what the statement says. Read it carefully. Whenever an external pressure is applied on any part of a fluid contained in a vessel, it is transmitted undiminished and equally in all directions. Right? So that is the meaning we are trying to convey here. Right? Guys, are you able to understand what I'm trying to say? So P1 is equal to P2. So when P1 is equal to P2, what is that we can say in terms of mathematics? F1 will be equal to F1 by A1. F1 by A1 will be equal to F2 divided by A2. Right? So this is the principle on which a hydraulic lift would work. So this is the simplest concept. As I told you, Pascal's law is a very, very simple concept. Only thing you need to remember is whenever you have a fluid, which is enclosed in a vessel, if you apply pressure at one of the ends, the pressure will get transmitted to the other parts undiminished. So pressure at any point is pressure at one point is equal to the pressure at second point. But one important point to be noted. So there is a difference between there is something that we are ignoring from the concept that we learned yesterday. What is it? We are not taking the
pressure at same level will be equal.
Yes, pressure at same level will be equal is yesterday's concept. But what happens if you take two different points? What did we say? Pressure will get changed as per depth, right? But Pascal's law works on the principle that it ignores it. Okay, so Pascal's law doesn't take the concept of depth into consideration. So we are actually ignoring it to state this law. Okay. So one more thing is hydraulic brakes also work on the same principle. When we apply a little force on the pedal with our foot, the master piston moves inside the master cylinder and the pressure cost is transmitted to the brake coil to act on a piston of larger area. So this part, what you can do, you can read on your phone. Now I will be doing some problems based on this concept. So let's see how the questions will be asked. First, so the two thigh bones, each of cross-sectional area 10 centimeters square, support the upper part of human body of mass 40 kilogram. Estimate the average pressure sustained by the thigh bones. So what is it? So how do you calculate the pressure? How do you calculate the average pressure? So the average pressure can be calculated as
mg upon area.
Yes. So what is mg? So you have the data, try to solve and tell me what is the answer. So verify and tell me whether it is right or wrong. So mass is 40. You can take G as 10. So what is the weight that is acting?
400 Newton.
400 Newton divided by the area on which it is acting. So one area of cross section is 10 centimeters. Not 2 pi r square. Do you mean to say your thigh is in the form of a circle? Area of cross section. They have already given the area of cross. Yeah. So they have given the area of cross section, right? So area will be 10 centimeters square for one thigh, but you have two thigh bones. So what will be the answer? 2 into 10 square. Sorry, 2 into 10 centimeters square converted to meter square and use it in the denominator for mg. You will get the answer. So do it fast and tell me. So answer should be 400 divided by 2 into 10 into 10 power minus 4. So this and this will get cancelled, 20. So 20 into 10 power 4 is 2 into 10 power 5 Newton per meter square. It is almost double the atmospheric pressure that a human body of upper body mass 40 kilogram that we exert on the thigh bones. That is the average pressure. Okay. I hope it is clear, right? Is everyone clear with this? It's a simple problem. Only thing is you need to understand that you need to multiply the area with 2. Okay, second, what is the pressure on a swimmer who's 10 meters below the surface of a lake? So there is a lake and the lake is obviously exposed to the surface and there is a swimmer whose depth is 10 meter. So what will be the pressure experienced by the person at that point? Pressure will be equal to atmospheric pressure plus rho gh. Right? It will be P naught plus rho gh. So what is the value of P naught? Yesterday I told you P naught is 1.01 into 10 power 5 Newton per meter square or 1.01 into 10 power 5 Pascal plus rho is how much? Since it is since nothing is given, you can take it as water. So it is 1000 kilogram per meter cube into G is 10 meter per second square into H is 10 meter. Multiply and tell me what is the answer. So it is going to be 2.01 into 10 power 5 Pascal. Okay. See, sometimes 1.01 into 10 power 5 Pascal is also written as 1 atmosphere, ATM. 1 ATM stands for 1 atmospheric pressure, 1 atmosphere. Okay. Third, the density of atmosphere at sea level is 1.29 kilogram per meter cube. Okay. Assume that it does not change with altitude, then how high would the atmosphere extend? So what are they trying to say? The density of the atmosphere at sea level is 1.29 kilogram per meter cube. So rho is equal to 1.29 kilogram per meter cube. G is equal to how much? 10 meter per second square. So height is equal to how much? So that you take rho GH. Okay, you take rho GH, it is 1.01 into 10 power 5 Newton per meter square. So substitute the value of rho and G, calculate the value of H. That will give you the height above the surface. So if there is any doubt, get it clarified. Or else I'll assume things are clear.
So could you repeat the 11.37?
Okay. Did you understand the question? Did you understand the question or not? See, suppose
Yes, sir.
I take the surface. The surface is exposed to what?
Atmosphere.
Atmosphere. So what will be the pressure at this point? P naught will be 1.01 into 10 power 5 Newton per meter square. Accepted?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now read the question carefully. The density of the atmosphere is given. So the atmosphere is made up of a combination of fluids. I'm not worried about what it is. So the density is given as 1.29 kilogram per meter cube. And they have mentioned one thing, assume that it does not change with altitude. Okay, taken. Then how high would the atmosphere extend? So that is what they are saying. So how high would the atmosphere extend means, so let's say the height with respect to the surface is h. Okay. So with respect to the point 1, can I say that h is the depth?
Yes, sir.
Correct. So what I'm trying to say is this h is the extent to which there is atmosphere. Means on top of this first layer, there is no atmosphere. Correct. So this fluid will exert a pressure of rho GH at point number 2. Accepted?
Yes, sir.
So that rho GH value is how much? 1.01 into 10 power 5. So they've given how much is the density of the fluid in this place. That is 1.29 into 1.29 kilogram per meter cube. You know the acceleration due to gravity. So your job is to find the height.
Understood.
Okay. So here one confusing factor that might happen is they asked how high. How high means you should actually solve the problem in the reverse, because rho GH is a formula which is used for depth. H is depth. Right. So we'll do one more problem based on this concept. Then we'll do a problem based on Pascal's law. Shall I proceed, guys? Now listen. Example 11.4. Tell me how to do. Read the question. At a depth of 1000 meter in ocean, what is the absolute pressure? So what do you mean by absolute pressure? Pressure at that point. So can I say pressure at the point, let me call it as A, will be the pressure exerted by the atmosphere plus the pressure exerted by the liquid on itself due to depth. That is rho GH. Can I say this? So this will be 1.01 into 10 power 5 plus what is the density of seawater? Density of seawater is 1.03 into 10 power 3 into G is how much? 10 into depth is how much? 1000 meter. So that is 10 power 3. So when you calculate this, you will get a value, and that value comes out to be 104.1 into 10 power 5 Pascal, or 104 atmosphere. Okay. So what is the gauge pressure that is acting here? So gauge pressure is the excessive pressure. So what is the excess pressure that they are trying to talk about? That is only rho GH. So rho GH is 1.03 into 10 power 3 into 10 into 10 power 3. So if you calculate this, you should get somewhere around 103 into 10 power 5 Pascal. Because from this 104, if you remove that 1 atmosphere, that will be the answer. So 103 into 10 power 5 or 103 atmosphere. Any doubt guys?
No, sir.
Okay. Find the force acting on the window of area 20 into 20 centimeters square of a submarine at this depth, the interior of which is maintained at sea level atmospheric pressure. Okay, there is a submarine which is at a depth of how much value? 1000 meter, and that submarine has a window. They're asking us to calculate what would be the force that would be acting on that particular window, provided the interior is kept at what value? Interior is kept at the sea level atmospheric pressure. Okay. So what will be the force, guys? We know that force is equal to pressure into area.
So P naught into area, sir.
Yes, but it will not be P naught, right? P naught is atmospheric pressure. It is not P naught. Okay. So here, what pressure will act? It will be the excess pressure that is going to act. Okay, that is a gauge pressure, because what did they say? Interior is maintained at sea level, so you have to reduce that value. So Pg into A. So we have already calculated this gauge pressure. How much is the gauge pressure? 103 into 10 power 5 into what is the area, guys? Area is 400 centimeters square or 0.04 meters square. So multiply it, that will give you the answer.
Sir, why are we taking gauge pressure?
Because read the statement, what did they say? At this depth, what is there? At this depth, the interior of the submarine is maintained at the sea level atmospheric pressure. Okay, so what is the excess pressure that it is experiencing? So at that bottom, it will only experience the excess pressure. Okay. So it is because of this statement. Had this not been given, then you should have taken the absolute pressure.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So could you repeat?
Had the statement interior is maintained at the sea level atmospheric pressure, if this word was not given, then you should have taken absolute pressure. Since that is given, the submarine window is experiencing only the excess pressure.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Got it.
The force is imparted on the windows only due to the excess pressure. Okay. This is a very important problem. There's an NCERT problem as well. So there are two syringes, okay, of different cross-sectional area, A1 and A2, and lengths L1 and L2 without the needle. Okay, they are filled with water and they are connected with a tightly fitted rubber tube filled with water. Diameter of the smaller piston and the larger piston are 1 centimeter and 3 centimeter respectively. Find the force on the larger piston when a force of 10 Newton is applied on the smaller piston. So did you understand the question? First of all, this is a very, very important question, as I told you. Read the question carefully. So there is a syringe. Right? You have something like this, and there is a tube that is connected. Okay. Of course, the tube is also supposed to have a varying diameter, and the rubber tube is acting as a what? It is acting as a medium between these two syringes to communicate. Okay. So there's bigger one, there's smaller one. So what did they say? Two syringes of different cross-sectional area A1 and A2 and lengths L1 and L2 are filled with water and are connected tightly with a tube filled with water. So inside there is water. So what do you mean by the word they are connected tightly?
Water cannot flow out.
So there is no loss of water, am I right? So whatever pressure you apply, the water has to get circulated only inside. And second important point is you're assuming that the water here is incompressible. Okay, means what should happen? The pressure applied on one side should. So you tell me logically, when I apply pressure on this side, what do you think is the effect you can observe on the other side? So you know how it's syringes, right? Normal injection syringe, how it is. So how is it going to be? Like a doctor, let's say they apply pressure here, the medicine will come out right through the needle. In a similar way, assume that the water is going to travel. What will it try to do to the syringe on the other side? There is a piston here, right? So what will happen to the piston of the smaller syringe? It
Water
will
will push the piston.
push the syringe outward. You're able to visualize that,
Yes, sir.
right? When the piston of the larger one is pressed, the piston of the smaller one will be pushed out. Similarly, if you do the reverse, this side piston will come out. And who is acting as a medium? It is the water. And this whole process is working on which principle, on which law is it working?
Pascal's law.
It is working on Pascal's law because the pressure is getting equally transmitted. Okay, so there are two syringes of different area of cross section. This area of cross section A1, this area of cross section I will take it as A2, this I will take it as L1, the smaller length I will take it as L2. Okay, diameter of the smaller piston and the larger piston are 1 centimeter and 3 centimeters. So the diameter here is 3 centimeter, the diameter here is 1 centimeter. Now what is happening? Find the force on the larger piston when a force of 10 Newton is applied on this smaller piston. What will happen? So how do I calculate this? It's very simple. P1, so if I take pressure at point 1 and pressure at point 2, P1 is equal to P2 accepted because all the keywords are given in the question. So when P1 is equal to P2, what can I say? F1 by A1 is equal to F2 divided by A2. So what is that we need to find? According to the data that we have taken, do I need to find F1 or F2? According to the diagram that I drew, do I need to take F1 or F2? Concentrate. Guys, are you there? Read the question. Find the force exerted on the larger piston. So our job is to find the force experienced by the larger piston when a force of 10 Newton is applied on the smaller piston. I took smaller as 2, right? So we need to find 1. So F1 is equal to, F2 is how much? 10 divided by, what is A2? Pi d square by 4. So pi d square by 4 means, I'm not converting it to centimeter, I'm not converting it to meter because I'm able to understand that A1 and A2 will have the same unit, they will get cancelled. So there is no point in converting it to meter. So 1 square divided by 4 into 3 square divided by 4. Pi into 3 square divided by 4. 4 and 4, pi and pi are gone. So F1 will be how much? 90 Newton. Guys, is there any doubt in the calculation that I did? Is there anyone having any doubt?
So can you once scroll up?
Sure.
So what is the shape of this?
It's a cylinder. Generally, how is a syringe? No? It's in the shape of a cylinder only, right? So that is why I took the area. See, for a cylinder, for that cross section, if you see the cross-sectional area, it looked like a circle. That is why I took the formula pi d square by 4.
Okay, sir.
Got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, okay. If you guys are clear with this, there is one important point I want to say here. Did you observe one thing? How much is the input force that you gave?
10 Newton.
So, you gave 10 Newton, but what is the output force you are able to take out?
90.
You took out 90 Newton, that too from a bigger syringe. Means, look at the beauty of this law. What is it trying to say? You take a smaller object and apply lesser amount of force, but you can generate maximum output. Isn't it a more efficient process? Are you guys able to understand what I'm trying to say? You used only 10 Newton of your 10 Newton force, right? You did a simple job, but you exerted 9 times the output of what you gave. Is it not like 900?
Sir, I have a doubt.
Please tell me.
Sir, there'll also be pressure on the walls of the syringe, right?
That will be there. It will be there. But we are not concerned about it. I'm only concerned about because the pressure is not so strong enough to break the syringe, right? So I'm not worried about it. I'm ignoring the value. But what is the effect you're able to see? The effect you're able to see is you're able to see this piston moving. That is more important for me. That is what is the example that is used in cranes and all those things. Somebody told me, right? That it is used in crane. This is the logic they use. They exert less amount of force, but they extract maximum force on the other side. That is why you see hydraulic lift also what is happening. Whenever you now you observe hydraulic lift, you will understand things better. You observe the area this side. Sorry. You observe the area this side. So which side area is small? Which side area is small?
The side where we are applying the force.
We're applying the force, right? So area is small. What is happening? By applying lesser force also, you can generate more amount of pressure so that it is transmitted and is able to lift a car which is almost 2 ton. 2 ton is almost 2000 kilograms. All right, that is what is happening. Think about it. Okay, I just wanted to tell this. Think about it. You will understand slowly. So this is one important point. And secondly, this is another important point. If the smaller piston is pushed through 6 centimeter, so on this side, what is the displacement that has taken place for the piston? It is 6 centimeter. They are asking how much distance would the larger piston have moved out? Okay, are you guys able to understand? So what are they trying to say? By applying a force of 10 Newton, you pushed the smaller piston by 6 centimeter and you generated a force of 90 Newton on the other side. But that 90 Newton, how much distance is it able to push the piston out? Is the question. So when you talk about this, can I say that volume is conserved? Can I say that the volume is conserved? So the displacement of the piston, so the piston is like this, guys. The area of cross section is A2. A2 has got displaced by a distance of 6 centimeters. So how much is the volume covered by it? So how much will be the volume that has how much is the volume of the liquid that has got displaced? It is A2 multiplied with 6, area of cross section multiplied with the thickness. Correct? So what I'm trying to say is volume on the side 1 is equal to the volume on side 2. So what is the volume on side 1 that will get displaced? Side 1 is a larger piston according to us. So volume on side 1 is A1 into X is equal to A2 into 6. So what is A1? Pi 3 square divided by 4 into X is equal to pi 1 square divided by 4 into 6. So pi by 4 will get cancelled. X will be equal to 6 divided by 9. 6 divided by 9 is 2 divided by 3, which is 0.67 centimeter. Means the smaller piston has got displaced by how much value? By a value of 6 centimeter, but the larger piston has got displaced only by value of 0.67. That is happening because its diameter is very big.
Sir, how are you saying volume is conserved?
Because inside the liquid is there, no? That is what I asked you in the previous case. When they use the word tight, when they say it is tight, I also told you that the liquid you are considering is ideal, means it is incompressible. So it is incompressible,
Yes.
right? That is the reason. Okay, can we do one last problem based on this concept? Then we can move to the next concept. So 11.6. Can you guys try this? It's a simple problem. It's a problem based on hydraulic lift. So in a car lift compressed, air exerts a pressure F1 on a smaller piston having a radius of 5 centimeter. This pressure is transmitted to the second piston of radius 15 centimeter. If the mass of the car to be lifted is 1.3 ton, so look at it, 1350 kilogram, calculate F1. So there are
Sir?
please tell me.
Sir, in hydraulic lift, you told that we could use the lift to lift the car. But then in this problem, the previous problem which we solved, in the smaller cross-sectional area, if we it's moving 6 centimeter, whereas in the larger part it's only moving 0.67. So
Yes.
wouldn't this be inefficient in the case of hydraulic lift?
No, it will not be. You calculate and see, no, it will not be. Because the objective is not because, see, try to understand. I expected this. So good that you asked. See, thing is, this is already at a certain height. We want this height to be increased, that's it. And secondly, you are not supposed to concentrate on the 6 centimeter and 0.67 centimeter. I asked you to concentrate on something which is important. What did they say? You are applying a force of 10 Newton, but you're able to generate an output of 90 Newton. That is what is more important. Because is force necessary for the object to get lifted, or you are concerned about the displacement to which it is acting?
Force, sir.
Right? So that is what we need. That's what I meant. You give an input force of 10 Newton, you are able to generate 9 times an output, means it is 9 times efficient. Efficiency is what? Output divided by input. Output force is 90 divided by 10. See, this is not a formula actually. Efficiency is generally calculated as output power by input power, but I'm trying to explain for your understanding. So output force is 90, input force is 10. Means you are able to generate 9 times the greater value of what you have put. Suppose you want to lift it to a greater extent. Instead of 0.67, you let's say you want to increase lift it by few meters. Then what you can do is you can apply a force which is 9 times less that is needed to lift the car. So your input is decreasing. That is where the efficiency comes into picture. Subrajit, are you able to understand what I'm trying to say? You will,
yes,
depending on the necessity, you will keep adjusting the force. Okay. So that depends on what is to be achieved. That's a different story. There is a problem. In real-time scenario, what will happen? These ratios will be taken into consideration and they will work accordingly. Okay. Please tell me.
Sir, can you show that hydraulic lift?
You want the diagram? Huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm drawing it. So it looks something like this. Here there will be a piston, here there will be a piston, and there will be a structure on which the car will be placed on a small base. And you apply force on this side over an area of cross section, you can lift it on the other side, which is having a greater area of cross section.
Sir,
Will this help?
Here, the efficiency of hydraulic lift will depend on the distance between where we apply force and where the car is lifted.
No, it doesn't depend on those things. Because it is equally getting transmitted. Inside, what you will do is you cannot use a logically think, man. If you use a compressible fluid, what would have happened? Had used a compressible fluid, what would have happened? When you apply the force would have first compressed the fluid, then it would have lifted, then it would have been inefficient. Okay. Whereas here, what are you doing? You're using an incompressible fluid and it's a closed vessel. When you're using the incompressible fluid, whatever force you apply here, it will start getting transmitted to the other side. So it doesn't depend on where you apply and all those things. You're able to understand?
Yes, sir. Sir, but in
Yeah.
real time, is it possible?
They do it. They do it. If at all you have any mechanic sheds or something near your location, next time if you go, right, like let's say your dad is giving your car or bike for repair, just observe now what is going to happen if you get a chance. All these things are real time. Hydraulic lift is not a hypothetical concept, it is a real time one. All these
Sir,
are used.
real time fluids are compressible, right?
They're compressible, but they will use it in such a way that it is not. So I showed you a hydraulic machine, right, just now. How did it work? I showed you, right? I opened a door and showed you, right?
Yes,
How
sir.
did it work? So depends on the requirement. You can actually take it to the ideal scenario. I'm not sure of what fluid is used, but it's a good question. Maybe when I have to think about it, next time I'll try to find it out. But it's a real-time scenario. I myself have seen it many times. Okay. If you get a chance, go and observe it next time. So in a car lift, okay, let's come back to the problem. In a car lift, where is it? So did anyone solve this problem?
Yes, sir.
F1 divided by A1 is equal to F2 divided by A2. F1 is how much? That's what we need to find. F1 divided by, for A1, what will you do? Pi into phi square. I didn't convert it to meter, is equal to, because meter and meter will get cancelled on the other side, meter square and meter square is equal to, what is the force on the other side? 1350 into 10 divided by pi into 225. Pi and pi will get cancelled. Phi square is 25. 25 and 225 will go 9 times. And this will go 150 times. 150 into 10, 1500 Newton is the answer. Correct? 1500 Newton. Now, what are they asking? What is the pressure necessary to accomplish this task? Pressure, you can either calculate F1 by A1 or F2 by A2. Both will give you the same answer. So here they have solved it using F1 by A1. If you want, you can use F2 by A2 and also check it. You will get the same answer. Okay. So this is all about Pascal's law. So the next concept that we are supposed to get into is the concept of Archimedes principle. Okay, that is the principle of buoyancy that we are going to talk about. So yesterday itself, I told you one thing. So you would use the word buoyancy. Buoyancy is a phenomenon, and buoyant force is the force that we are going to talk about. So the principle of buoyancy, when will it come into picture? When you take an object, okay, when an object is immersed in a fluid at rest, the bottom surface experiences greater pressure than the top because the pressure depends on the depth. This is known fact. Right? So when you put a solid, when you try to immerse the solid into a liquid, what will happen? The bottom of the solid will experience more amount of force compared to the top portion because the bottom is going to be at a slightly lesser depth. So at that point, what will happen? The pressure exerted by the liquid will be slightly greater. Right? Due to which what will happen? The liquid exhibits a tendency to push the object out. It will not try to take anything inside. It will always try to push the object out of it. Right? And why is it happening? It is because the liquid will exert a force on that solid called as the buoyant force. Okay. So we call it as buoyant force. Here they've used the word buoyancy or the most.
Sir,
Tell me.
sir, but the force at the top of the solid should also like after adding the force in the top of the fluid plus the atmospheric pressure, then wouldn't it be equal to the force from
It
below?
will not be equal. It will be equal only if it is somewhere stuck in the middle. It is in the equilibrium condition. You take, let's say, for example, you have a bucket of water. You try to put the mug inside it. Will the mug automatically go inside? Have you ever tried to apply a pressure and see on top of it? We need to apply some pressure or put it at a certain angle to pick that water, right? So when you keep the mug exactly perpendicular to the water surface and try to push it, what will happen? The water will try to push the mug outside, right? Why is it happening? You need to give a justification to it, right? So one theory that we know is pressure exerted by liquid will vary with respect to depth. That is what is happening, right? So here it will not get balanced unless the whole system is at equilibrium. If you are applying an external pressure, if you are applying an external force to keep it at equilibrium, that's a different story. But as such, if you leave the object and the liquid medium, what will happen? The liquid medium will always try to push the object outside. And why is it happening? It is happening because of the buoyant force. Now the question that comes is, will this happen only if the solid is completely immersed into the liquid? The answer is no. Even if it is partially immersed, you can see that it is experiencing some force. That concept completely depends on what kind of a solid material you are trying to send into the liquid. Into what kind of a liquid, for that matter. Means it depends on the densities of the liquid. Let me complete it, you will be able to understand it. Okay. So for that, let us consider a cylinder of height h and faces with cross-sectional area A, which is completely submerged in a fluid of density rho as shown in the figure. So what we have done, we have taken a solid cylinder. Please understand, it is not a liquid portion that we have considered. It is a solid cylinder. And the solid cylinder is what? It is immersed into the liquid completely. And let's say it is at equilibrium. Then what is going to happen? So there will be a pressure which will be exerted on the top surface. There will be a pressure that will be exerted on the bottom surface. And this surface as such has a weight associated with it, which is mg. Right? So the fluid exerts a pressure P1 at the depth D1. So this depth, if I take it as D1, so what is the pressure exerted on the top surface? It is rho g into D1. I'm ignoring the atmospheric pressure because when you try to write the equation, it get cancelled out. Okay, rho g into D1. Similarly, if pressure is rho g into D1, what will be the equivalent force that is acting on it? What will be the equivalent force that is acting on it? Force is equal to pressure into area. So that will be rho g into D1 multiplied with the area of cross section. Accepted? Is there any doubt till this step? Right. Similarly, the force acts downwards and perpendicular to the surface. So the force here will be in the downward direction. Similarly, the fluid exerts an upward pressure on the bottom, where I will call P2 as this distance, I will call it as D2. Okay. So what will be the pressure at this point? It be rho g into D2. Accepted? So what will be the force at this point? F2 will be pressure at point 2 into A. That will be rho g into D2 multiplied with A. Any doubt in this? Any doubt in this?
Sir,
Tell me.
so rho GD is the pressure applied from the top column of water to the bottom column of water, right?
Pressure at this depth. So the depth is D2 from the surface. So the pressure at this point is rho g into D2. That rho g into D2
No, but the
is
direction is towards downwards, right? Not
pressure
upwards.
has no direction. Pressure has no direction. Please understand. The pressure at this point is rho g into D2, but we are able to sense from our understanding that this pressure will try to push the solid in the upward direction.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Yes. Now, what will happen if I am able to calculate the difference in the pressure? This force acts upward and perpendicular to the surface. So the net upward force due to the fluid is what we call it as buoyant force. So which force will dominate? Obviously, F2 will be greater than F1. If you are able to calculate the difference of F2 and difference between F2 and F1, that is what is mathematically the buoyant force. So how much will it be? Rho g A into, can I call it as D2 minus D1? Correct? Rho G into D2 minus D1 is what is going to be the buoyant force. Any doubt in this? But what is D2 minus D1? This is D2, this is D1. D2 minus D1 is nothing but the height of the cylinder, right? So can I write this as rho into G into A into D2 minus D1? Can I write it as H? And this will be equal to FB. Now, this area multiplied with the height will give us the volume, right? So, rho G into volume is equal to FB. Am I clear, guys? What volume am I trying to talk about? This is the volume of the solid. VS stands for volume of solid. But the density of solid multiplied, sorry, this density, this rho is the density of whom? Tell me one thing.
Water.
This rho is the density of the liquid. So rho of the liquid. Okay. So density of liquid multiplied with the volume of solid in this case will give us what? It will give us the mass of the liquid that is displaced. Try to understand. So density of the liquid multiplied with the amount of volume that is in contact with the liquid will give us the mass of the liquid that is displaced. So mass of the liquid displaced into G will give us the buoyant force. So what is that you're able to understand? What is that you're able to
Weight
understand?
of the liquid displaced is equal to the
Exactly equal. So if you need to, buoyant force is a known concept to us. But if you have to mathematically calculate what is the value of buoyant force, what are you supposed to do? You need to calculate the weight of the liquid that is displaced. Okay, this is a very, very,
Sir?
very important. Tell me.
Sir, but this is for if the solid is completely immersed, right?
Even if you do it partially, what would have happened? You will have rho L into VI, I would have written. It is volume of the immersed portion. That is what Archimedes principle states. Now I was about to state that law. Okay.
Okay, sir, understood.
Okay. So don't worry. Tomorrow I'll be solving some detailed problems on it. That time you'll understand. So in today's session, I'll explain what is Archimedes principle, and with that we'll close. I have to leave. I have another meeting. Okay. So I'll tell you what is Archimedes principle. With that we'll end the session. Please write it down. Archimedes principle. So what does it state? When an object is partially or completely immersed in a liquid, when an object is partially or completely immersed in a liquid, the weight of the liquid displaced, is equal to the buoyant force. The weight of the liquid displaced is equal to the buoyant force. Okay.
So
So
can
what
you
is it?
repeat the whole thing once again?
Sure, I'll do that. When a solid is partially or completely immersed in a liquid, the weight of the liquid displaced, is equal to the buoyant force, That's it. The weight
Okay,
of the
sir.
liquid displaced is equal to the buoyant force. One last statement, with that I'll conclude. Any doubts you have, I'll clarify tomorrow, okay, because I'm in an urgency to leave. So I'll tell you, in your lower grades, you would have learned something like this. The volume of the liquid displaced is equal to the volume of the immersed portion of the solid, right? So that is at that point. Now it is stated in a slightly matured way. What we are trying to say, when a solid is partially or completely immersed in a liquid, the weight of the liquid displaced is equal to the buoyant force. So think about it. We will be doing some important problems in tomorrow's class. Then we'll go to the fluid dynamics. Okay. So till then, please make a note of all the doubts that you have. We'll discuss it tomorrow. So tomorrow's class will be offline. It will be in the academy. Those who want to attend can come to the academy. Okay, I'll see you all tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.